Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Gonna go through everything you guys need for your betting tomorrow with a look at some of the stat averages, a weather report for Friday this week, as well as some underdog and prize picks value you might want to add to a few slips of your own. And while we're not going to have the matchup boards to go through quite yet, they don't have the tee times posted out there for round 3. We are going to talk about our strategy over there from that side. So I'll give you guys some of the tools to go out there and find some matchup value of your own to potentially go out there and add it on the books. But yesterday we ended up cashing out on that free underdog slip. The matchups are still up in the air in a few cases. We'll have to see how it all plays out, but ended up being a profitable day over here with our fades. Courses played really tough, especially over there on the North course, which was priced at like 69 and a half strokes, and be able to go over there and take overs for. So hopefully you guys are able to go out there and tail yourself, get into the profit, and we can keep it going over here for moving day. So we got Mark down there. Hopefully you're having a fantastic week. And what's going on, Bobby? He says the PGA is becoming inept when it comes to the fans. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but the weather today was pretty wacky for sure. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass. What's going on, Phil? Is your 5 of 6 done, or is it still pretty good? A lot of people ended up missing the cut this week. So you don't have the final 6 of 6 rates as of yet, but a 5 of 6 is going to be a lot better this week than most. So you're certainly not dead. So he said you pour out a drink for your homie Aaron Rye. Yeah, he's one of the many guys who ended up missing the cut this week. A lot of studs up towards the top ended up missing the cut. And if you take a look at the guys that are going to be available for round 3 showdown, I mean, it's a lot of 6K guys down there at the bottom end of the board. So, hey, you're not the only one that has a 5 of 6, but certainly not dead. Let's talk about the prop side of things. That's what we're going to focus on here for this live stream, is trying to find some value out there for tomorrow. By the way, if you're looking for showdown stuff, fantasy advice, I already did a whole ass live stream over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube. So if you're looking for all of that, make sure to check out the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. I'm on there for an entire 45 minutes, breaking all of that down for you. I've also got my Patreon page with all of my projections posted. I just tweeted out about that about 5 minutes ago. I've got everyone on there color-coded, by the way. So I know it's a little bit of a headache with guys not getting through the cut. I took care of that for you over there on the sheet. So everyone's color-coded, so you know exactly where they stand. And I added a few extra tabs over there on my Patreon sheet to give you guys some insight into why I'm using guys over there for showdown. So sometimes I'm looking for high upside players. Sometimes it's course history, ball striking poppers, guys that have putting regression, etc. I added that over there to my showdown process. So it took me a little bit longer, especially like the color coding and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's going to be a lot more useful over there. So if you're on the Patreon page, go out there, let me know what you think, maybe over there in the comments. And then, hey, if you're not on the Patreon page, you might want to check it out, because I've got some pretty sweet stuff brewing. Let's talk about this golf course from today, which really these stats aren't going to help us all that much, but I do like to go through the stats after every single round. It's not going to play nearly as difficult tomorrow. So played a whole 3.6 over par at the South course, and it went from about 3.25 birdies or better per round, dropped an entire birdie down to about 2.25. And the real big difference came with the bogey average, which went up nearly 3 bogeys from rounds 1 to 2. So that was where a lot of the scoring average difference came from. As expected, the green average plummeted to only about 9 per round, and the fairway average was the least affected out of all the 4 different stats, going from about 7.2 per round in round number 1 down to just about 6.6. And if this isn't enough evidence for you that fairway averages don't move all that much, then I don't know what's going to be, right? So a lot of times I hear cappers say like, oh, I'm going to take unders on fairways because it's super windy. This is a perfect example of why that's not the best strategy, though it was a little bit lower than what you had for round number 1. All these other averages drastically changed out there with the conditions. The fairway average didn't move all that much. So while this might not be that valuable out there for tomorrow, I think the round 1 averages going to be a little bit more spot in line. That is an interesting note down there with the fairway average. Just something that I've preached for quite some time, right? Saying that fairways don't really change as much out there with the wind, but this is tangible evidence of that being the case. The reason why I say that those averages aren't really going to matter is if we take a look at the models over here for Friday, they look pretty calm across the board. So you got sub 4 miles an hour over here on the HRRR, but even if we bring up all the different models at the same time, they're all calling for at most about 6-7 miles an hour sustained winds. So I would expect conditions to be a lot closer to what we had for the first round of action, as opposed to these ones that were well over par. And just to remind you guys, the scoring average for round one was about 0.6 over par. And I gave you some of the other averages, right? Birdie average was closer to 3.25 per round, closer to about 3.25 to 3.5 bogeys or worse per round. I'd have to double check the exact average there, but much easier scoring than what we had for round number two. And the other aspect that we're going to go through here are going to be the pin locations over here for moving day. And we got these just a little bit out there before this live stream, so I haven't been able to go through them hole by hole quite yet, but we're going to do that here on live stream to get a really good taste of what we're going to face, because we don't even have sportsbook lines to compare to. So over here in sites like Prize Picks, Underdog, that sort of thing, we're raw dogging it tonight, right? We don't have Draftkings lines, Fanduel lines, Caesers lines to go off of, but these sites also don't have that kind of data. So it's one where we're really going to have to deep dive, go through these pin locations, and get an idea of what conditions are going to look like. So where are we at? What's going on, Tyler? Hope I'm doing well. Thanks for the plays. Of course, I'm doing fantastic. It's getting a little late, so I'm getting a little tired, I'll admit, but I'd rather do it tonight than have to wake up early and do a live stream. So we're going to power on through. What's going on, Jonathan? Is there an easy way to see the percentages of 6 of 6 lineups? There is. There's a Twitter/X handle called Cut Sweats over there on Twitter that tweets it out all the time. So if you go to Cut Sweats over there on Twitter, they're going to have little graphs that show you the 6 of 6 rate that change as play goes on. So in the middle of the round today, you could have seen the live 6 of 6 rate. And if you check it as of right now, you're going to get an idea after this round ended. So check it out if you haven't already. Do we treat today as a washout, go off of day one data for round three? I'm doing that for the guys that were on that golf course, but only half the field, right, was playing the golf course with the ShotLink data. So I think if you want to, give a longer leash to guys that struggled today, I think that's perfectly fair with how different the conditions are going to be. But I think you bring up a really good point there. The round one data might be the best data because it's a golf course that's going to play similar to tomorrow, right? Little to no wind out there. Pin locations are going to move around, but it's going to be the same kind of ball striking test. So the guys that played well in round number one, I think are really sharp plays over there for tomorrow. And personally, in my process, that's what I did. I took guys from round number one that hit their irons well in particular, and I jammed them into my lineups. And also off the tee. If guys were getting like 2.5 strokes off the tee, they were guys I got to. Is the +1 cut confirmed? Pretty much. You still see that some players haven't finished round two. Yeah, statistically, it's going to be a +1 cut line. I don't think there's any variance in that with the kind of players that are left, but you are going to have guys that move in and outside of that cut line. So that's why over there on my Patreon page, I went and highlighted players based on that. And let me actually I'll show you what I'm talking about, but I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom where I don't have any of my plays posted because obviously, guys, I've got to keep it behind the paywall for my Patreon members. So you're not going to have any of the plays on here. But you can see on the left side, all this like highlighting. The yellow means that they're currently on the cut line and on the golf course. So they're the kind of player that, if they make a bogey, they're out of the cut, they make a birdie, they're in a pretty good spot. The green guys are on the course and within the cut line. And then the red guys, as you could probably guess, are on the course and outside of the cut line. So anyone that's gray here means they're good to go over there for tomorrow. Any highlighting means that you're going to have to keep an eye on them. So +1 is going to be the cut line, but you have a lot of these kind of players. And I think it's like 20 or something like that we have in the field that haven't finished. Are guys included in my projections. So obviously, I think the ownership on these guys are going to be a lot lower. You can see that with guys like Malnati and Ryder there. If they happen to make the cut, they're essentially going to be unowned. But unless you're going to wake up early tomorrow and account for all of those changes, then you probably don't want to use those sort of players because, you want them to make the cut if you're going to use them in your lineups. Let's see. How do I feel about Thigala for over 3.5 birdies? Well, I'll let you know after I see these pin locations, Dave. So I guess we'll come back to your question, but it all depends on the setup and what they're doing with the moving day pins. So speaking of, let's just start going through those. So this is going to be hole number 1 here, which is a back right pin location. I would say compared to days 1 and 2 that this one's a little bit harder than what you had. The reason I say that is it's more protected over this bunker. You did have this little collar in front of the green, which, if you hit it just in front of the green and bounced it up, like you can see this shot right here, it wasn't all that bad. Whereas if you hit a ball a little fat or you don't get enough mustard on it over here to this back right pin, you're going to be in the bunker and have a slightly more difficult up and down. You had people putting from in front of the screen and even making birdie over here to this front left pin location. So I don't think it's like a tough pin because it's one of the shorter holes. You're probably going to have 150 yards in if you can hit the fairway, but I would say a harder pin location than what you had for the first few days. Hole number 2 is over here in the back left corner. This is an easier pin location, and it's going to seem counterintuitive because over here to the right, it's down in a little low area. You have a lot of the slope feeding towards this back right corner. But I can tell you from experience that this back right corner, from what I've seen with players, has some of the most slope of any of the pin locations on this course. So while you might be easier to hit it to this quadrant, making putts on this portion of the green is much harder than the rest of the green. And you can see all the slope there with all those moving little beads. On this right side of the green, it's at a higher spot, so you have to ball strike it a little bit more precisely to hit the ball close over there. But at the same time, you don't have as hard of a putt. It's a lot flatter. You don't see as much movement on this portion of the green. So I actually think that hole 1, it may be a little harder because it's over that bunker. You can see more bogeys at hole number 1, I would say. But hole 2, I think you're going to see more birdies because of the easier putting to that location. Let's go to hole number 3 next. So hole 3 is going to be on this front right quadrant. I wouldn't quite call it the front right because they're giving you some room over this bunker to move it close. And this is going to be a much easier pin location. You've got the side slope to the left, which is significant enough to move the ball pretty much from the middle of the green the whole way onto the pin. And then a little bit of a backstop here as well. Now, the unfortunate part is that I think they're going to move the tee box back. So for rounds 1 through 2, you can see that they had it at this front pin over here. It can play as long as this back pin the whole way back in this corner, which if they play it back here to this front right corner, I think it'll still play to about the same scoring average because it plays so far downhill. It'll also probably be downwind like it was over there for today. So if that's the case, I still think it's probably an easier pin location. But if they play it from like this tee box or even like the front of this back tee box, it's going to play significantly easier than what you had for days 1 and 2. The reason I say that, it was like up here on this back little shelf, which made it kind of tricky. And then when you get close to this little canyon over, and then anything to the left, you bring in a lot of big numbers over there as well. Hole number 4 is a front left pin location. So this one's definitely a little bit easier. They use this on Sunday sometimes, so I don't want to call it an easy pin location. The miss over here to the left side can be especially devilish, but it's shorter. It gives you a shorter club into this kind of green. And the one thing I'll say is because it's moving day, I wouldn't even throw it past them shortening up this hole, maybe using one of these up tee boxes, either this one or maybe even this one the whole way up here. Because if they're going to use this front pin, and a lot of times in moving day, right, they're trying to give these guys a bone, trying to make it a little bit easier. I would say after the really difficult conditions or 75 scoring average, that there's even more propensity for them to go out there and make it softer the next day. If they move up the tee box, you could have a wedge into this hole. And if you have a wedge to this front left pin location, it would just be birdies all day. Because you have a little bit of a backslop here to move back the ball, and you can see all the slope from the middle of the screen is taking you closer to that pin location. So that's going to be a tee box that I'm keeping an eye on. There's usually not a bunch of tee boxes that move around, but if they were to move that one from even just a one tee box up, I know it doesn't look like that much, but you take it from 487 to let's say 470, something like that. You give players a pitching wedge into that green, it's going to make a huge difference with the scoring. Hole number 5, let's get it to load over there. Check the next one out. It's going to be a middle left pin location. So this is a medium length par 4. I would say it's a little bit easier than what you had for holes rounds 1 and 2 because it was tucked a little bit closer to the bunker over there for the first few days. And then this slope, which looks really helpful on this hole, was actually really tough when it came to the putting. If you ended up missing the green, it made the chips exceptionally difficult. And over here to the left side, there's really nothing to protect it. There's no bunker you have to hit over. You miss to the left side, it's just rough that's going to gobble up your ball. Probably not going to take you too far from the complex. I like that pin location. So I wouldn't say too much softer, probably pretty neutral compared to the first few days. But I think it's less protected. You'll see less bogeys there for sure. Hole 6 is over here on the right side. So it's going to be over here on this like right shelf. It's definitely harder than days 1 and 2. Days 1 and 2, this was the easiest pin location that you could possibly get. But I wouldn't call this right side pin location difficult, especially on such a short par 5 there. It's by far the most reachable around the South Course. Hole number 7, you got this front pin location, which is significantly easier than what you had for days 1 and 2. This left miss over here just runs a mile off to the left. It's pretty much an impossible up and down to the short-sided pin there. But over here in this front quadrant, you're going to see a lot more birdies at hole number 7. Still a tough hole driving-wise, but if you hit the fairway, you're set up for success. Hole 8 is a middle back pin location, so it's still up on this little shelf, but it's towards the middle of the green. So it's tougher than the ones down in like the bottom left, which you might see for round number 4, but it is easier than this right side pin location because you have more room to miss left and right. Hole number 9 is a front or slash middle right pin location. It's like over here. I would say it's easier than what you had for rounds 1 and 2. It's going to play shorter as a par 5. It's 622. So, any shorter yardage you can get, you're going to take. And also, it's below this big slope. So when it was up on this little ledge over there, it made 3-putting possible. It also made these chips a little bit more difficult to get close. But now down on this lower tier, I think you're going to see more people getting up and down. And that's another easy one for sure. So we've had a few that were harder, but in general, these do seem a little bit softer than what we had for the first few days. 10 is a back left pin location. So I would say this one looks a little trickier than the first few days, but I wouldn't say it's all that much harder because this bunker to the left, you'd have to have a real mishit to hit it over there. And it is a longer shot. So I guess I'll give it that from the trickiness standpoint, but I don't want to say it's that much different than what we had the first few days. Next up, we got hole 11. It's over here in the back right corner. Now, what I'll tell you about this back right quarter pin location is that it's really tough, but it's actually easier than this back left pin location, which you may say, like, if you zoom out here, let me get the slopes off here so you can actually see this. You may say that kind of seems crazy because you're hitting to the broad side of the green. But if I bring the slopes back up, you'll see that everything is driving you away from that corner. So now that it's down in this lower depression, it's actually a little bit easier than what you have in the back left. And because it's on the back right corner, I have to think, because of how firm the greens are this week, that they're going to shorten this hole up. Because if you have to hit a 211-yard shot back to that back right corner, that doesn't even feel fair. So if they're going to move up the tee box, I mean, they already did that for the first few days. Maybe they move it up just to the front of the tee box that they used for the first few days. Then I would think it'd get a whole lot easier. If they happen to play the back tee box, though, let's say that they really go hard on these players for whatever reason, then that would be a very difficult hole. So I would say 11 is really going to come down to what they do at the tee box, which unfortunately we're not going to know ahead of time. Hole 12 is a back middle pin location. So it's probably about like 7 paces to the left of where it was for today. No real difference compared to rounds 1 and 2. It's pretty similar. Hole number 13 is in the front middle. So it's going to play a little bit shorter, and it's down in this little swale in the center of the green, which is real nice because you have the slope to the left that'll help you, a slope to the right that'll help you as well. If you happen to hit it up near the green complex in 2, that's going to be an easier chip to go out there and get up and down. So 13 is definitely a little bit easier. 14 is a middle left pin location. Let's get it to go to the next hole. So it's over here on this like left side, which is significantly easier than this back right corner. Back right corner, you have this little bit of a slope bisecting the green. It's a all pure carry over this bunker as well, with a death miss over the back. So, everyone was missing short if you were going to miss there. Now it's unprotected over there on the left side. So I think that's going to be significantly easier there. 15 back right pin, so it's going to play longer than the first few days. I would say a little bit tougher too because of this little slope that's bisecting there. Next up, we have hole 16, which is going to be a front pin location, which I could tell you is a little bit easier than what you had for the first few days. That's a little bit shorter, but the tee box is going to be the real thing. If they shorten up this hole, it could be scoreable on moving day. They'll sometimes use the tee box way over here, which would kind of make sense with the angle that they've got going on. If you take a look at the 16 over here, if they play it from this like left side, it brings this bunker into play more, right? So just to show you that, or if they're hitting from this tee box here and the pin would be like right here where I have my cursor. You can see from the tee box that it brings that bunker into play. So I think with this kind of pin location that they're going with, that they're probably going to move the tee over there. That's just my intuition. 17 is a front left pin location, so it's over here on this bottom left side. I would say it's pretty similar to days 1 and 2. It was over here in the front right corner for the first few rounds. Yeah, pretty similar scoring wise, I'd say. And then finally, 18's in this back right corner. It's also going to be pretty similar to the first few days. You don't have as much of a backstop to work with. It is back there in the back right corner. But if you miss in this right side bunker, it's going to be a much easier up and down. And it also kind of takes the water out of play. So I think you're going to see a lot more people going for this green in 2 because you're not going to have that water in your mind when you're going for it, especially without as much wind into you. The wind was heavily into over here for day number 2. So I think they may go for it more. And then if you miss in this bunker, even like short right, it's a much easier up and down than over there to that back left. So yeah, I think that one's probably an easier pin location. So just to circle back to the averages, right? Round 2 isn't going to help us all that much, but even compared to round number 1, I think it's going to be about the same kind of scoring average. So maybe about 0.5, 0.6 over par, if not closer to an even par scoring average. With these low winds, with the perfect temperatures expected tomorrow, I expect these guys to go out there and, not tear up this golf course, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what you saw for today. So when we get to some of these props over here in Underdog Prize Picks, we can use that to our advantage. So let me refresh both of these sites so we have all the props available to look at. And I haven't entered anything myself yet, right? We just got these boards before I went live. So let's try and find some value together to go out there and enter. You don't see a link for the round 3 projections on your PC? It should be over there in Patreon. I'll just because you asked, I'll check it myself, but I just posted it about 10 minutes before I went live. Yep, it's up there. Every tier that should have access to it will have it there. You have to be a part of the DFS tier to get it, so it's on there. You might want to refresh it. And just to show you, it's right there, right? Posted 47 minutes ago. Let me know if you can't find it, though. I'll help you out. Tyler says, what do I think about Grazeman under 71.5? So yeah, let's talk about a few of these props. So I know David asked about Thagala over 3.5. You're asking about Grazeman 71.5. I don't hate those leans whatsoever. And I was kind of thinking in general that if I could take an elite tier guy to shoot -1, I think that's pretty reasonable. So I was mostly looking at Jason Day. He was the first one that stuck out to me. But like a Grazeman, I guess you throw into that same conversation. Sahith Thagala as well. And if we go over here to the birdie or better tab, we don't have a day prop, or else I'd probably try and take that. But 3.5 birdies for Sahith Thagala makes quite a bit of sense. Let me see. What is he over here? So he's 4 birdies over here in a site like Underdog or Prize Picks. So that's probably something I'm staying away from. But at 3.5, if you get him for about even money on a sports book, I'd probably be all over that, David. So let me know what kind of odds you're getting on that, but I think that makes quite a bit of sense. But to circle back to the 71.5 question, really what I'm making sure to look for in players is some ball striking stats. And the reason why I thought Jason Day might make a little bit of sense, let me actually bring up Bet the Number real quick so I can show you guys some of these shots gained metrics. And we can go through them together. All right, there we go. So Jason Day hit the ball pretty well. You just really couldn't buy a putt. So just to show you guys what that looks like, gained about 1.5 strokes off the tee. Approach play was slightly into the negative, which is sub-ideal, but it was real windy out there. And then lost nearly 2 strokes putting. This is the kind of stat profile where, shoot -1. And by the way, if I can give you guys his course history, that'll further add on top of that. So J-Day, he did miss the cut last year, but 2 years ago, he had a top 7 finish here. 3 years ago, was a top 3 finish around Torrey Pines. Did miss the cut 4 years ago. That is a top 16 the year before that. And then multiple wins in his career around the Torrey Pines. So Jason Day, by the way, when he was finishing in like 7th and 3rd place 2-3 years ago, that was when Jason Day was in his downturn, right? Wasn't playing his best golf at all. Was dealing with some back injuries, all that sort of stuff. Was still finishing top 10 at this event. Has multiple wins long-term around this golf course. I'd have to say that that's why I was really looking at him. Grazeman, though, just to show you some of the stats on Grazeman, I guess we can look at that as well, right? So Grazeman in his round around the South course, He gained off the team, gained on approach. So, I think he'd be another pretty good candidate for that. So let's throw both of those into the shopping cart. I'm probably leaning towards a Jason Day one just right now because I like the course history as well. But these would be the kind of leans I'm looking at. And I have to say, I like some fades as well. So just because we're looking at, these unders right now, doesn't mean I won't mix in an over as well. So I was looking at potentially Mark Hubbard for a fade. It's not so much the shots gain metrics that make me want to do that, which by the way, he had a good approach day over there when he was playing. It's more so course fit with a Mark Hubbard. He's 1 for 2 in making cuts around here, a little bit too short off the tee for my liking. So maybe he's somebody we could look at for an over. But to have J-Day, Grazerman, and Hubbard at the same number is just a mistake. They're either all too high or all too low because, Jason Day is way better than Mark Hubbard, right? Like Grazerman's way better than Mark Hubbard. Like there's no way they should be at the same number. So I think there's some value that we can squeeze out of this board. So Mark Hubbard was the one real fade I was looking at. This Grazerman, the Jason Day ones, I guess are things that we can look at over here. Let me see if they have them both over here on the underdog side. So yeah, they do have Jason Day at 71.5 strokes. And do they have Mark Hubbard posted as I guess the real question, huh? So they do, and they have them there at 71.5 strokes. The reason why I say this is that over here on the underdog side, this would pay 3.24x as opposed to just 3x over here on Prize Picks. So, if we're going to take an anti-correlated slip, the place to do it is undoubtedly over there in underdog. If we're looking for a correlated slip, though, it probably doesn't matter where we enter it. It's going to be 2.75x on Prize Picks, 2.76x over there on underdog. If it's strokes props, that is, on underdog, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. Okay, I guess a Hostler kind of stands out as a potential fade. Let's see how he played over at the South Course this week. So actually pretty well, right? He actually gained off the tee, gained on approach across all 4 stat categories. In fact, went out there, was able to gain. It's mighty fine impressive out there for a +1 round. That's what he was able to generate with those kind of shots gained metrics. It's maybe not the best stat profile to go out there and bet against, but I've got to say, he's not the best course fit around here. His course history has been a little bit hit or miss. If you take a look at Beau Hossler, did have the T6 finish last year, but 3 missed cuts in a row. And then before those 3 missed cuts, he had a T9 finish. So, out of the last 5 years here, Beau Hossler has, 3 missed cuts. That's not great, but also 2 top 5 finishes. So he's kind of hard to get a read on for this golf course because the stat profile looked pretty good today. His course history is all over the place, and I just don't think he fits the golf course well. So I don't know. The Mark Hubbard one feels like a better fade. Let's do a little bit more line shopping before we decide, I guess. I think maybe a Luke Clanton under in strokes is something I was looking at. I wish Sanjay was 71.5. I've got to say, if he was 71.5, he'd be a smash under spot, in my opinion. A Thomas Dietrich has elite tier course history, so I was looking at that as a potential under. There's honestly a whole bunch of stuff that I was looking at before, but if we had to narrow this down to a single slip to go out there and play, it's kind of tough. It's like part of me wants to anti-correlate because if we do so over here in underdog, we can get a boosted payout. But then part of me says like, nah, just take advantage of the easier conditions and go out and play something that's correlated for like 2.7x. It's kind of tough to figure out what to do here. So let me see if there's any questions. If not, we're going to go through this. How do I feel about Springer versus Walker in a matchup? Got to say, I think fading Walker makes a whole lot of sense. You don't know much about him. You have to think he falters. I agree with that sentiment. That's why I think it would make sense to go after him. In -135 odds, seems like a fair price to pay. So I would say that that's a decent bet. What about Dietrich under 71.5? He can putt, so it helps. His course history is really solid as well. So just to give you that, last 2 years, he went top 20 last year, T37 the year before that. He also played well at the U.S. Open that they had around Torrey Pines. So yeah, I got to say, I think he's a decent lean for that. I think J-Day, I might like a little bit more just because I think he's a better player, but I think they're both solid leans. What about Sanjay strokes? Yeah, that 71 line, how I said, like, I thought it, or at least I wish it would have been at like 71.5. I think it's a terrible lean, though. Didn't mean to take it off the screen there, guys. My bad about that. But yeah, 71's decent under. You looked at Clayton too? Clayton. I don't know who Clayton is. You'll have to let me know. Vegas over 3.5 birds. So yeah, I was looking at some of the birdie lines. What I'll say about them is that they don't have the best players posted. Like if they had guys like Sahith Theegala at 3.5 birdies, if we had a Jason Day, for example, at 3.5 birdies, like I'd be for sure looking at their overs. But when it's guys like Johnny Vegas, like especially guys like Goddard, Joel Damon, like no, thank you. There's no way I'm ever going to bet their over on birdies. Same things on guys like a Alanto, like just there's no way in hell. And I'm betting those like lower tier players for an over on birdie. But like the only one that kind of stands out would be a Johnny Vegas, I guess. Also maybe a Harris English. He's a relatively good putter, but I don't know. It's just I wish we were getting a better player when it came to that 3.5 birdies. Which speaking of, Underdog sometimes offers more props than what we get over there in Prize Picks. So let's see if they're doing that this week. Let's just type in birdies are better and see what they have for the board. Yeah, it looks the exact same. Yeah, they copy and pasted the board over there from Prize Picks. I guess not a surprise without the tee times to work with. But yeah, like I would lean over for sure on Johnny Vegas. It's just probably something I wouldn't play. I don't know. It just kind of sits the wrong way. Aberg under 70.5. He tore up that course yesterday. He did not. So the course he tore it up on was the North course. They're still playing the South course. So not playing that same course. Oh, you're looking at Clanton. Yeah, that 72 with the push equity seems real nice. And here's what I'll say about Clanton. You guys know, like I'm decently close with the kid. I've played with him a lot. He's usually really, really good at ball striking, which is what I love. It's why I like playing him for props, playing him in DFS. But we've never seen him at a golf course like this before. Even as one of the bigger stands in the world of Luke Clanton, I thought he might struggle this week. And today on the South course, in hard-ass conditions, he got the job done. Now, here's the issue with Luke Clanton. Here's why I wasn't sure if I was going to bet it or not. He gained 5 strokes putting today. So he lost on approach. He did his thing off the tee. He's a really good off the tee player, always. Approach play can be a little inconsistent, but gaining 5 strokes putting, like, I just can't see him doing that again. He's just not that sort of guy. However, could he improve with the ball striking? For sure. Like he could easily improve the iron play, which might make up for the fact that he's not gaining 5 strokes putting. And the around the green, it bit him a few times on his last 5-6 holes. He had a few really bad chips that cost him an entire stroke pretty much every single time. Like he doesn't always do that either. Like he's usually a little bit better around the green than what we saw. So the stat profile was kind of worrying me, but I think he could improve. Like he didn't have the best day, yet he still shot under par on the South course, which is kind of scary to think about, right? This is an amateur. This is a young kid. He's still in college at FSU, and he's going out there and shooting under par without his best stuff. Like, I mean, that's that's next level stuff. Getting 5 strokes to the field in that kind of situation. All good, by the way. Ludwig birdie matchup. Let's take a look at that. So he's going against Goddard. Ooh, yeah, I like that a lot. He's a lot higher tier player. He's also a much better birdie maker than what you have there with Goddard. The one thing to keep in mind if you're going to take that matchup is that it is a 0.5 birdie or better matchup. So if they end up tying on their birdie line, that it's going to be an under out there towards Chris Goddard. So keep that in mind that you don't have that push equity on that sort of prop. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And you can see the difference, right? It's a 0.5 matchup over there with the first two. And then these other matchups are 0.0 matchups. So they're meant to be even money. And just to go through them, I like that they're giving multiple selections for those for once. Usually it's been either all 0.5s or all zeros that they're offering. But yeah, I'm not a big birdie better matchup fan, so I probably won't play that prop over there with Ludwig. But yeah, I think the talent gap discrepancy is there between those two players. So yeah, I would lean over for sure at that sort of prop. Yeah, the Sanjay one seems a little closer. I might stay away from that one. He's against Chan Kim, right? Yeah, Chan Kim's an absolute madman. One of the highest birdie percentage players that we have on tour. What's your question about Sami Valimaki, Noah? If you can let me know your question, I'll get you an answer. You were debating Clinton or Grazeman for 71.5. I would go, I hate to say it, but Clanton, maybe it's the homer in me saying it, but the slip I'm thinking about entering right now for the slip that we do here in the live stream might be these two for unders, just because I think conditions are going to be pretty good tomorrow. It's not an easy golf course, but two legit top level players to go out there and shoot under par, doesn't feel like it's asking too much. Like they can make some mistakes. Guys like J-Day, Clanton could probably make 3 bogeys tomorrow and still shoot something under par. It's kind of where I'm leaning right now. What's going on, Joseph? Just a breakdown of how he's played so far, of course, and if I think he could get hot. Yeah, great question. Let's go through it. So I always love the breakdowns of players, by the way. Those are my favorite questions, just because we get to kind of like figure out what's going on together. I don't always know what these players are doing. So going through his round, let's see, was it round 1 or 2? So he played round 2 on the South course, the harder course. So really tough day out there. Did gain putting. So, that's not always a huge red flag, but when the rest of your stat profile doesn't have a lot of green on it, you kind of hate to see that the one category that you got most of your work done with was the one that's the most variant out there on the greens. So I would say that the stat profile from round number 2 doesn't give me a whole lot of optimism, but what does give me optimism is if we go back to round number 1 and all these birdies that he was making. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 birdies that he posted out there in round number 1. I would say that the stat profile doesn't seem overwhelmingly positive, but Sami Valimaki in general, he fits these harder golf courses. He's a grinder from the DP World Tour that is used to playing at courses with deep rough where accuracy is at a premium. So I think he could get hot. Yeah, why not, right? I think it's a good course fit. You've seen him play well at these sort of tracks. And one thing I'll say is he's going to go under the radar, right? No one's really talking about him there at T26. So if you have a hunch, whether it's in betting or over there from like the DFS or fantasy angle, I say take it because, he's going to be underlooked for sure. Yeah, and I showed you the stats. If you have any questions, just feel free to let me know. And what's the word with Danny Walker? So yeah, he's one of the graduates from the Korn Ferry Tour. Either that or the Q School. I believe it's Korn Ferry Tour where he got his card. Well, all I know about him, this is really the only factoid I've got on him for you, is that he loves astrophysics. Saw that from his profile today. I had to do a deep dive myself on his profile to figure out what the hell he had going on. He's from UVA, University of Virginia, and he hit all 18 greens at Torrey Pines in round number 1. And that was on the South course, the harder of the 2 golf courses, the one that they're playing out there for tomorrow. And he hit all 18 greens. So, like I said, if there's one set of stats to really look at, it would be round 1 because it's the most similar conditions to what we're going to get for tomorrow. And he was absolutely flawless. So, I know we were talking about your bet before where you were thinking about taking Springer against him. I guess that'd be the argument against it, right? Is that Danny Walker tore up the South course round 1. But I still think he comes back down to earth, just for the record. Of course, you have an underdog promo, but it has to be 3 legs. So I would say the best way to do that, Mark, would be to join my Patreon page so you can get like all the props I'm entering and pick your favorite 3. But, we've gone through 3 different props on here that you could enter, right? You could throw in that Mark Hubbard prop if you wanted to for an over. If you wanted to make it all unders, like you could go with a Max Grazeman if you wanted to. I've got to say, if you've got a big boost, like for a payout, then maybe you correlate it and then use the boost to go out there and get a boosted payout. So maybe you do something like that. Who else we were looking at? Like Sahith is there at 71.5. I've got to say, Sahith, he seems like he's due for a bounce back. Like I know he didn't look the best out there, but it feels like he could kind of get it going out there for tomorrow. This might be the slip like I want to enter. Like I've got to say that Sahith line at 71.5, it wasn't really like speaking to me before, but now it kind of is. Like he's the kind of guy who he bounces back in a hurry when he goes out there and he's able to do so. Let me see if I have that promo on Underdog. I know I'm not going to have it on this account. They don't give me any promos on the one I have that's limited to like $25 entries, but I do get them on my fresh accounts. I get all the promos on some of them. In fact, one of my accounts, I think they have flagged as like a losing player, which makes no sense. All the other ones have flagged as winning players and end up getting limited over time. But one of the accounts I have, for some reason, I get like the whale promos. There was one for the not for the Super Bowl, like week 1 of the NFL season, where it was like you get a 0.5 prop, but no limit. So it was like 0.5 on Patrick Mahomes, and you could use it multiple times, and it had no limit to like 1,500. Let's just say they lost like 20 grand that day when they did that. Because I literally spam entered. I like put my whole bankroll into it and just spam entered props. But let's see. I think I have the same one. 70% profit boost. Yeah, I think I have it too. Let's see. Let's see what the payout would be on that sort of slip if we went with like a correlated one. So yeah, rather than paying you 4.37x, which would normally be what they would do for like 3 unders on strokes, if you took the 70% boost on that, it'd be 6.72x. In in this account, I can enter up to $500. That's what I would do, Mark. I'd probably go with these 3 over on Underdog. That's what I would do. The under on these 3 for strokes. I guess you could insure it if you wanted to. I'm not sure if that's a part of that promo, but that's probably what I end up going with. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got out there for the round 3 stream. It's getting a little late over here, as I mentioned. Sleep's calling my name in about an hour and a half, but best of luck over there with all of your exposure for moving day. For all the different prop slips that I'm entering, make sure to check out my Patreon page for all of that. I gave you guys 3-4 different prop lanes that I'm looking at here in the live stream, but for everything I'm actually entering and where I'm putting my money, make sure to check that out over there on the Patreon. There's a link in the description of the video to go over there and join there, and you're not only going to get access to all the exposure I'm entering, but all the stat averages out here for these courses, up-to-date weather projections if they change out there in the morning, as well as all the different educational stuff that I do for the prop side as well. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. It's only $15 for the entire month for all the different betting info that I do. So unlike a lot of other premiums or Patreons, premium pages, whatever out there, that'll charge you an arm and a leg just for their plays, I give you a lot more information than those other sites do. All the extra info, analysis, all the course info on top of that at a much lower price too, and winning picks on top of that aren't going to cost you your entire bankroll. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. But that's all I've got over there for round number 3. And let's go out there and crush our exposure.